Yeah, so Eleni, this was a couple of hours ago. We did hear the interceptions. We also heard the alerts, the emergency alerts, telling us to stay inside. And it does appear as though there has been some kind of impact near or in the grounds of Dubai International Airport. We're waiting for official lines on that. What we did hear is that flights were suspended temporarily. We heard from the Dubai Media Office saying that it was for the safety of passengers, airport staff and airline crew. But then just half an hour later, Emirates said that all the flights had resumed, and if you had a flight this afternoon, you could presume it was going to go ahead. Now, we did speak to a resident of Dubai who was inside the airport when the blast happened. Let's listen to what he saw.
Well, shortly after 9 o'clock, we were at the Terminal 3 at Dubai International Airport, and there was a large impact. A lot of smoke could be seen from the glass. It seemed to be within the airport perimeter, but obviously in these situations it's quite difficult to tell. There were vibrations, reverberations. What was extraordinary is that the way the Dubai authorities within the airport reacted. There was professionalism, there was calm, there was no panic. The passengers showed no panic either that I could see.
And certainly that was the case when we were at the airport a few days ago. It was a very calm and organised atmosphere. Now, at this point, it's unclear whether it was a direct hit, whether it was debris from an interception. We certainly have seen a number of drones and missiles continue to be able to impact the Gulf nations. Here in the UAE on Friday, officials said they intercepted 9 ballistic missiles, 101 drones, and they remain on high alert. We also saw in Saudi Arabia that officials there saying that 20 drones were approaching the Sheba oil field when they intercepted them. Also, the Ministry of Defense saying that there were 5 separate waves of attacks since midnight. So even though we are hearing from US officials that the ability of Tehran to be able to retaliate, that the number of ballistic missiles and drones is dramatically reduced from the beginning of this war, they are still able to get some through. And certainly more than 100 drones coming towards the UAE on Friday is still a significant number, but the air defense systems here and also across many of the Gulf nations are working as they should. Well over 90% of what is coming in is being intercepted. Eleni?
I'm going to bring you more now on the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Israeli military says it has struck more than 500 targets since the war began. Jeremy Diamond is in Tel Aviv. And Jeremy, we are seeing huge displacement of people. I think that one NGO putting up more than 500,000. We have seen more than 200 people killed. You were close. You were in the Israeli side of the border. Give us a sense of what you and your team have witnessed today.
Yeah, that's right. A very active situation at the border between Israel and Lebanon. A lot of fire between both sides. We heard everything from artillery strikes, airstrikes, to drone and missile fire from both ends of the border. All of this as this new front in this war between Israel and Iran very much heating up.
Oh, wow, that was a drone that seems to have just made impact here. There were no sirens warning, but we just heard an explosion right here in Metula. We're right along the Israel-Lebanon border, and we just heard something come in fast over our heads and make impact. Okay, so we're gonna put our vests on now because we just saw not one but 2 projectiles coming in. Still not clear exactly what that was, but we're now starting to hear the outgoing Israeli fire responding to it. We're just hearing a lot of activity right now, kind of going in both directions, in fact, as this new front in Israel's war with Iran is very much heating up. So that smoke right there just came from Israeli artillery that was being fired from behind us. So it went over our heads. We then saw it make impact there, and you can see the smoke that's still coming up from the target location. And now, okay.
He's so used to it.
And that wasn't hitting the same spot. Yeah, getting very active here now. Here too. So we're seeing several areas now in southern Lebanon that are being struck by the Israeli military, and some of those positions that they are hitting are within a kilometer of the Israeli-Lebanese border, and that's significant because all of these positions in the most southern part of Lebanon were supposed to have been cleared of Hezbollah fighters over a year ago, and so the fact that Israel is now having to hit positions so close to its border suggests that Hezbollah is trying to re-infiltrate those areas, and obviously Israel now fighting to try and rid those areas of Hezbollah once again.
So, Issa, you could see and hear some of those cross-border attacks that took place today. We've now learned from the Israeli military that 8 soldiers were wounded as a result of some of those very same types of attacks today. 5 of them are in serious condition. 3 others were lightly injured, according to the Israeli military. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, we are witnessing the mass displacement of hundreds of thousands of people in the Lebanese capital of Beirut, as the Israeli military yesterday issued this fairly unprecedented order, evacuation order for almost the entirety of the Dahia, those southern suburbs of Beirut that are known to be a Hezbollah stronghold. The Israeli military carrying out intense strikes not only in southern Lebanon, which we could hear from our position today, but also in the capital of Beirut. And the question now is, where is this all headed? We certainly witnessed today an intensification of this aspect of the conflict, and we know that the Israeli military has called up tens of thousands of reservists. They are occupying portions of southern Lebanon. Question now whether they will push even deeper.
I want you to tell me about the latest news, Paula, about interceptions in Dubai this morning and any impact that you can tell us.
Well, Eleni, as you got alerts and heard interceptions overhead in Abu Dhabi, it was a similar situation here in Dubai and also in Sharjah. This is another emirate which has been largely untouched over the past 7 days. They also got an emergency alert. So at this point, we're looking into exactly where points of interception may have been, where points of possible impact may have been, but we are hearing from officials that they remain on high alert for anything that might be incoming. Now, we have been hearing from the US side, from the department, the Pentagon, and also the Joint Chiefs of Staff commander, that the number of missiles and drones that Tehran is able to send has sharply dropped. But here in the Gulf, they are still continuing to be able to launch them. Now, we do know that certainly from the first couple of days of this war, the number of missiles is sharply down. But the number of drones, yesterday, for example, there were more than 100 drones that were intercepted coming into the UAE. And that, of course, is the concern, that Iran is still able to continue targeting these Gulf nations in the way that it has been. Now, Iran does say that they're targeting military targets of the US, they're targeting American political centers. It's very clear they are targeting far more than that, and we have seen those impacts here in Dubai with a couple of hotels having impact potentially, though, from interceptions of missiles or drones rather than a direct hit. We've seen airports being impacted, and energy infrastructure is definitely something we are seeing more of across the Gulf. Saudi Arabia, for example, we know that there were attempted targeting of that this morning. We heard from Saudi Arabia that there were 5 separate waves of attacks since midnight. We seem to be seeing a pickup there. Also, 3 missiles intercepted on their way to Prince Sultan Air Base. It's a Saudi military base, but we know in the past US military jets have been housed there. So the ability for Tehran to be able to target the Gulf nations at this point, well lessened from the beginning of this war, from Saturday and Sunday, which was far more intense, is still not being completely cancelled out. We heard from CENTCOM, Central Command in the US, that they had targeted a drone carrier ship from Iran. They say they hit it, it was on fire. But of course, there is still this ability. Eleni?
United Arab Emirates have all intercepted missiles and drones headed towards their countries. CNN senior producer Bijan Hosseini is monitoring all this. He is once again live for us from Doha, Qatar. What's it like there this morning?
Hi, Alex. All things considered, pretty calm here for the time being. We know that in the UAE, within the last 30 minutes, our team members across 3 different cities, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and Sharjah, have received emergency alerts on their phone that a missile attack is ongoing. So we'll continue to monitor and update you all on that. Attacks being sent into Saudi this morning as well, waves of missile and drone attacks on oil facilities and on the Prince Sultan Air Base. We know, according to Saudi's Ministry of Defense, that those have all been intercepted. In Bahrain, sounds alarms going off this morning for residents there, asking them to seek shelter. We don't have any additional information on hits or how many projectiles have been fired into that country. And we know that Kuwait yesterday saying they shot down 12 drones and 14 missiles. Yesterday here in Qatar, the Ministry of Defense confirming to us that 10 drones were sent to target the country. 9 of those were intercepted. We know that one did hit in an uninhabitable area of Qatar, according to the Ministry of Defense. This all comes after U.S. Central Command on Thursday said that Iranian ballistic missile attacks had decreased by 90% and that drone attacks had decreased by 83%. Obviously, in the UAE, they're still getting those alerts. They've been absorbing the brunt of Iran's retaliation. Here in Qatar, as I said, a fairly quiet night, all things considered, from what we've experienced in the last 8 days. We know that Civil Aviation Authority here in the country announced overnight that they're going to partially reopen the airspace here, which of course is a huge relief to the more than 8,000 passengers we know that were stuck here as they were transiting through Doha's a major airport hub, the Hamad International Airport. And after that announcement of the reopening of the airspace, we heard from Qatar Airways that they would begin operating limited flights from the capital here to 5 major cities: Rome, Paris, Madrid, Frankfurt, and London. So a little bit of a relief for the passengers here, but obviously still attacks incoming for our colleagues in the UAE at the moment.
Yeah, because there was some question about, does Iran have anything left after all of this? And clearly, at least for the time being, they do. Not sure if he can hear us, but...
Yeah, Alex, yeah, exactly right. I mean, we haven't seen us... Sorry about that, just a bit of a delay there. You're exactly right. We have seen, as I said, a brief pause of hostilities here in Qatar, but still every single day, all these Gulf countries, minus Oman, have experienced attacks from Iran. So a bit contradictory to what we've heard from U.S. Central Command. Yeah, but we'll just have to wait and see here, Alex.
Part of southern Lebanon. Israel says it struck an Iranian command center in Beirut today, amongst other targets, and Lebanon reports at least 217 people have lost their lives in the fighting so far. Jeremy Diamond went up to the border with Israel today, didn't you, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's right. I was along the Israel-Lebanon border, which was a very, very active scene today. Just one cross-border attack after the next, going in both directions. At one point, my team and I saw 2 projectiles flying directly over our heads, hitting a location in Israel very close to our position. Subsequently, we saw Israel responding with one artillery shell after the next. Those were also whooshing over our heads in the other direction, hitting targets inside southern Lebanon that were really not very far from the Israel-Lebanon border. And that was what was really so stunning about this crossfire that we witnessed today, was the fact that it suggests that Hezbollah is re-infiltrating positions that they had abandoned or been forced out of over a year ago amid Israel's attacks on Hezbollah at the time and the ensuing ceasefire that resulted, Lebanon's disarmament of Hezbollah south of the Litani River. All of that seems to have been for naught to a certain extent, given the kind of pace and the intensity of the crossfire that we saw today. In fact, 8 Israeli soldiers were wounded today, 5 of them seriously as a result of one of those Hezbollah attacks on an Israeli military position in northern Israel. Inside Lebanon, of course, we've been witnessing the intensity of Israeli airstrikes there, not only in South Lebanon, some of what we were able to see and hear today along the border, but also in the Lebanese capital of Beirut, where yesterday the Israeli military issued this very widespread evacuation order for almost the entirety of the Dahia, those southern suburbs of Beirut that are considered a Hezbollah stronghold. And then subsequently overnight, the Israeli military carrying out intense airstrikes there, destroying several high-rise buildings. And again, of course, this is deepening a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon, where you now have hundreds of thousands of people out of their homes, some of them living on the streets. And again, it's not clear, how much more this could potentially escalate. We did see Israeli military tanks on the border. Residents in the area told us that they were seeing more and more personnel and materiel moving in towards that border as well. The looming question now, whether Israel will deepen its control of just a thin strip of land in southern Lebanon and go for a broader ground offensive once again.
And what sort of sirens have you been hearing in Tel Aviv tonight, Jeremy?
Well, just moments ago, we had once again air raid sirens sounding, indicating that Iranian ballistic missiles were being fired. We have, of course, seen those barrages diminish in size and scale, as Iran is sometimes firing as much as just a single missile at a time, which makes it a lot easier for Israel's air defenses to be able to intercept that. That's all the result of the U.S. and Israeli strikes on those ballistic missile capabilities. They've destroyed some 60% of those missile launchers that can be used to fire at Israel. And the result of that is that while we've seen shrapnel falling, we've seen a direct impact yesterday that didn't result in any casualties, we haven't seen any casualties in Israel, any fatalities, I should say, since Sunday, since the second day of this war. And so we will see whether or not that holds up, of course. But certainly there's been a major diminishment in Iran's ability to fire these missiles. But now, as this renewed threat of Hezbollah, and at times Iran and Hezbollah coordinating their missile attacks at the same time.
Jeremy, appreciate it. Live in Tel Aviv for us tonight. The Iranian strikes against Gulf states continue, but not at the rate they had been, as Jeremy was describing there for Israel as well. Over the last 24 hours, Iran's ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90%. US Central Command adds that drone attacks are down by 83%. This as Qatar's air defense says it successfully intercepted a drone attack targeting the US airbase earlier on Friday. Air defenses are also being put to the test in Kuwait, where falling debris has caused some damage. The war is pushing up the price of oil up to some of the highest levels in the past few years. The Energy Minister of Qatar tells the Financial Times that oil prices could hit $150 a barrel within weeks. Oil prices are hitting their highest level since late 2023, and Brent crude prices have gained 9%, hitting $93 per barrel. It's Saudi Arabia, though, that is the big supplier, and Nick Robertson is there for us today to give us a picture of that, that critical oil market.
Yeah, it really is. One of the tests that oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, like Kuwait, like the others all face is that their normal production levels, they ship it out. But when they can't ship it out, they have to put it in storage, and there comes a sort of a saturation point for their storage fairly quickly. So they're looking at the situation right now. If there isn't a resolution to the war, and the Trump administration is talking about this maybe taking as long as a couple of months, that really means for them they've got to address their output capacity. This has long-term knock-on effects, or the Straits of Hormuz get opened. But they're also, part of the calculation is, are they going to get drawn into the fight? And although Iran's output of drones and ballistic missiles may be down a little today in Saudi, it's been very focused sort of on one area in particular, Prince Sultan Air Base, just outside of the capital Riyadh here. 3 ballistic missiles intercepted in the early hours of today, and that was a first time, by the way, that Saudi Arabia had actually admitted that it had intercepted ballistic missiles. About an hour or so later, there was a drone fired in pretty much the same area. After that, a cruise missile fired in the same area. After that, 3 drones fired in the same area. All of these intercepted. Then another hour later, after those 3, another drone. And then a few hours ago this evening, after a break of a number of hours in those barrages, a cruise missile was fired in. So Iran really trying to go after that particular airbase. And so, you know, for Saudi Arabia, it's looking at the threat that still exists and this hard dynamic of what to do about its oil production over the longer term. And of course, as we heard from the energy minister in Kuwait, as you were mentioning, this can and will have long-term knock-on economic implications across the globe, and that's a worry.
Dramatic surge in strikes inside the country, in Tehran even. Give us a sense of what the US and Israel have been targeting overnight and throughout the day.
Yeah, that's right, Issa. Well, today alone, the Israeli military says that they have struck at over 400 targets in Iran. They are continuing, of course, to hunt those ballistic missile launchers that threaten Israel and its population. We know, of course, that those attacks have been largely successful in destroying at least 60% of Iran's ballistic missile launch capabilities, and has resulted in a reduction of the number of ballistic missiles that Iran is firing towards Israel. In addition to that, we're continuing to see efforts by Israel to go after Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as well as internal security forces targets as well. And the hunt that Israel is embarking on to kill as many senior Iranian political leaders as possible is also continuing, as the Israeli military is indicating today that they struck a secret bunker of the former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, which was beneath regime headquarters in central Tehran. The Israeli military releasing a video of this strike and saying that in recent days, it appears that this command bunker was being used by some of Iran's current leadership as well. They have yet to actually talk about any specific individuals who they believe they have killed as a result of this strike, but it shows, of course, Israel's continued ability and desire to go after Iran's political leadership in addition to targeting Iran's military capabilities.
Yeah, and for Israel, this is, of course, as you and I have been discussing, it's a two-pronged war as it takes the fight to Lebanon, where I'm just seeing more than 200 people have died, where almost 500,000 people have been displaced, according to one NGO. Give us a sense of what is happening in Lebanon.
Yeah, well, my team and I were along the Israel-Lebanon border today, and I got to tell you, it was very active, far more active than I even anticipated, especially when you consider the fact that Hezbollah, you know, for over a year was supposed to be gone from the areas closest to Israel, pushed back not only by the Israeli military and continued strikes, some of which continued even during this ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, but also by the Lebanese military, which was in the process of and had claimed success in disarming Hezbollah south of the Litani. But what my team and I saw today suggests a conflict that is only escalating.
Wow, that was a drone that seems to have just made impact here. There were no sirens warning, but we just heard an explosion right here in Metula. We're right along the Israel-Lebanon border, and we just heard something come in fast over our heads and make impact. Okay, so we're gonna put our vests on now because we just saw not one but 2 projectiles coming in. Still not clear exactly what that was, but we're now starting to hear the outgoing Israeli fire responding to it. We're just hearing a lot of activity right now, kind of going in both directions, in fact, as this new front in Israel's war with Iran is very much heating up. So that smoke right there just came from Israeli artillery that was being fired from behind us. So it went over our heads. We then saw it make impact there, and you can see the smoke that's still coming up from the target location. And now, okay.
He's so used to it.
And that was hitting the same spot. Yeah, getting very active here now. Here too. So we're seeing several areas now in southern Lebanon that are being struck by the Israeli military, and some of those positions that they are hitting are within a kilometer of the Israeli-Lebanese border, and that's significant because all of these positions in the most southern part of Lebanon were supposed to have been cleared of Hezbollah fighters over a year ago, and so the fact that Israel is now having to hit positions so close to its border suggests that Hezbollah is trying to re-infiltrate those areas, and obviously Israel now fighting to try and rid those areas of Hezbollah once again.
And so as you can see there, Issa, very active crossfire on the Israel-Lebanon border. And today, in fact, Hezbollah was able to seriously wound several Israeli soldiers as a result of some of these attacks. 5 Israeli soldiers in serious condition. 3 additional soldiers were lightly wounded as a result of one of those cross-border attacks. And while we were down there, beyond the projectiles that we ourselves saw, the air raid sirens that went off at one point due to incoming missiles, there were also a number of drone alerts across the northern part of Israel. So this is a front that we need to keep a very, very close eye on, particularly as Israel is issuing all of these evacuation warnings for the southern suburbs of Beirut, for every area south of the Litani River in southern Lebanon, and carrying out intense airstrikes of its own inside Lebanon.
John, you know, this morning we got an alert here in Abu Dhabi. We've got the all clear now, but clearly Iran is still targeting various countries here in the region. What are you experiencing there in Doha?
Yeah, Lenny, let's start with the UAE. I know you guys received those alarms in Abu Dhabi. Team members also receiving, sorry, I'm just getting a bit of feedback here, also receiving alarms in Dubai and Sharjah as well. We know that the UAE successfully intercepted 9 missiles and 109 drones yesterday. In Saudi Arabia, you mentioned those drones heading to the Sheba oil field. This is a massive oil and gas field in Saudi's empty quarter out in the desert. It's operated by Saudi Aramco. They put out, about 1 million barrels of crude production a day. So developments over there, those have all been intercepted, though, according to the country's Ministry of Defense. Also, additional missiles being sent to Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. All of those were intercepted as well. Over in Bahrain, we've heard reports of alarms sounding throughout the capital city there, but no reports of missiles or drones as of yet. In Kuwait, the country saying that armed forces yesterday shot down 12 drones and 14 missiles. And here in Qatar, the Ministry of Defense confirming over the course of Friday that 10 drones were launched from Iran. 9 of those successfully intercepted, with 1 hitting an uninhabitable part of the country. Eleni?
The Iran-Israel war. A humanitarian organization based in Norway says that nearly 500,000 people have been displaced now in Lebanon. Israel issued evacuation orders to Beirut's southern suburbs, as well as a large portion of southern Lebanon. Joining us now live from Tel Aviv is Nick Payton-Walsh. And Nick, listen, it seems now that if there was any doubt as to which partner in this war was more aggressive, there's really not much doubt now that, at least in the way they describe it, both U.S. and Israeli leaders are in it for the long haul, it seems.
Quite possibly, Jim, although while I think it's fair to say the Israeli assault against Hezbollah marks a slightly different chapter to the combined operation that's running with the United States against Iran. I think we'll see that probably endure longer than however the conflict with Iran continues. It's interesting you mention that people seem to be in this for the long haul, because you could also possibly read today some of the signals emerging from the White House that they want to retain great flexibility to essentially call an end to this any time of their choosing. President Trump's declaration of wanting unconditional surrender was immediately qualified by his press secretary, just said, to basically say he decides that whenever he wants. And if you remember the goals we've been hearing reiterated again and again from senior US officials, destroying Iran's missiles, its navy, and preventing it from having a nuclear weapon. That was reiterated by the White House's social media accounts just today as well. They are clearly saying they've got about 90% reduction in missile and drone launches. They say they've sunk 43 naval ships of Iran's, and it's pretty clear the nuclear program, controversially on the brink of whatever it was prior to this, is significantly taking damage through clearly all these strikes as well. So it's an interesting moment, certainly, because the messaging we're hearing from US officials is one of maximum bravado and commitment to pushing forwards, demanding full surrender, while at the same time, President Trump is also discussing, too, who he'd quite like to be the next supreme leader of Iran. And that has the flavor of some kind of political discussion in the wings as well. So it's clear that we're seeing a very degraded Iran now, quite possibly because of these strikes, still trying to lash out. We just over here saw interceptions flying over our heads, actually, the second of two quite significant salvos we've seen today here. Iran's certainly not out, but it seems that frequency of these kind of attacks reduced, Jim.
Welcome back to a special edition of Out Front. War with Iran. Tonight, northern Iraq is under attack. A drone just exploding near a hotel in Erbil. Erbil is the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan. Now, the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad in Iraq had just issued an urgent warning about explosions at hotels. And then after there was that drone at a hotel, a pro-Iranian militant group in Iraq now is claiming responsibility for the drone attacks and warning American troops and contractors that it would continue to target hotels across the country. Stunning, frightening, and also a sense of the chaos unfolding. I want to go now to Clarissa Ward. She is out front in Erbil, Iraq. And Clarissa, those drones targeting hotels, how much are attacks intensifying where you are in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan tonight?
Well, Aaron, this was about 4 or 5 hours ago that we saw this notification basically telling people to be aware that hotels with foreigners staying in them could be under attack from Iranian-backed Iraqi militias. It's important to remember, Aaron, that there are a lot of contractors, a lot of American contractors who were working on U.S. bases until recently and who have been moved to hotels since this war began. Not literally 2 hours after that alert and warning went out, 4 drones were fired into central Erbil. Most of them were intercepted, but one of them exploded next to a Rotana hotel in the center of town. And this really sending a chill down a lot of people's spines here, because it's the first time here in Erbil, or in northern Iraq, that we have seen a civilian target attacked like this. And now the sense is what to do with all these, not just contractors, business people who are in this area, who are obviously staying in hotels, and for many who have yet to find a clear and obvious way out, Aaron.
Yes. All right. Now, you were also, Clarissa, at the site of where a missile landed. So we'll show everyone the footage there, take a look at the impact. I mean, tell us what happened there and what you're learning now.
So earlier today, Iran basically warning the whole of Kurdistan that if any of these Iranian Kurdish groups launch attacks or launch some kind of a ground offensive into Iran, that all facilities in this region will be targeted. And we actually went to one of those Iranian Kurdish bases and saw for ourselves what that kind of damage looks like, because these camps have been coming under regular attack.
So Ward is in Erbil, Iraq, where a hotel was hit by drone debris. And for the first time since the war began, we have live reporting from Tehran. Fred Pleitgen is there for us. I want to go first to Clarissa Ward. Clarissa, we mentioned there was an incident at a hotel in Erbil. What happened?
So this was earlier on in the evening, Anderson. The U.S. Embassy in Baghdad issued an alert warning people that effectively they believed there was a high risk of attacks on hotels in the Kurdistan area where high concentrations of foreigners are staying. Literally 2 hours after receiving this notification, 4 drones attacked central Erbil. They were all intercepted, but one of them did explode next to a Rotana hotel in the center of town. This obviously is making a lot of people very nervous, Anderson, because here in northern Iraq, this is the first time that we have seen a civilian target attacked in this way, and it's certainly the first time we have seen groups, and these are believed to be Iran-backed militias in Iraq, explicitly saying that they are going to attack these hotels. Now, the reason that they're giving for going after these hotels, Anderson, is that there is a large number of American contractors and other contractors as well who, up until this war began, were working on bases around this area, but who have subsequently been moved into hotels
in Iran, with hundreds of strikes around the Lebanese capital. Israel has ordered the evacuation of entire Beirut neighborhoods and other parts of the country. Thousands of people have fled, and there is panic and large traffic jams as many try to get out. Matthew Chance has more from there.
Okay, we've got to go because they said there's been a warning from the Israelis that there could be a strike coming in. So we're going to get out of here, Alex.
Where they are going?
I don't know, but we need to get out. Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
No, but we've just been trying to film at this location here in Dahir, and we've been told to move away quickly now. Yeah. People were showing us their phones saying, look, there's a warning coming in. Go around this guy. We've come into what is the most dangerous part of the Lebanese capital, which is a very important stronghold of Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militia group. It's the place where Israel has been focusing, and you can hear the gunshots outside there, that Israel has been focusing its activity, its intensive campaign of airstrikes against the Hezbollah group. That's often, we're told, a warning to local residents who don't have cell phones or don't have that communication to tell them there may be an Israeli strike incoming. So we're going to get out of here. I mean, this chaos that we're getting a glimpse of in South Beirut, it's all happening, remember, because in the hours after the Iranian Supreme Leader was killed last weekend in those US and Israeli airstrikes in Iran, Hezbollah, which hadn't struck at Israel since 2024, fired rockets and drones across the border into Israel. And this has been the response. Israel is absolutely pounding South Beirut, forcing thousands of people out of their homes and really dragging Lebanon into a conflict that many Lebanese tell us they're not ready for and they do not want. All right, well, Dahir and the surrounding areas has hundreds of thousands of residents, and we were in a long traffic jam, I can tell you, trying to get out of there. Israel has also ordered the evacuation of vast areas of southern Lebanon, nearer to the Israeli border, to make way for military action there as well. And of course, causing a mass displacement of people, now trying desperately to escape the intensifying line of fire.
As Iran continues retaliatory strikes, Bahrain's national oil company has now declared force majeure after an attack on its refinery complex. This notice is served when unforeseeable circumstances prevent a contract from being fulfilled. In Kuwait, air defences are continuing to combat a wave of hostile drones from Iran. State media are saying one of the strikes targeted a government building. And in Saudi Arabia, the foreign ministry now accuses Iran of attacking the kingdom over, quote, baseless claims. As for the UAE, take a look at these images coming from Dubai's international airport. Flights to and from Dubai resuming after an unidentified object from Iran was intercepted nearby. The UAE has been amongst the hardest hit of about a dozen Middle East countries that say they've been struck by Iranian projectiles. CNN's Paula Hancock is in the UAE and sent us this report.
Oh my God.
The impact of strikes in the United Arab Emirates is far beyond the US military and political targets that Iran claims. Hotels, airports and energy infrastructure have been damaged by more than 1,700 missiles and drones fired since the start of the war. The Emirati military has intercepted more than 90%. UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan has visited the injured in hospital, giving rare comments, warning the country's enemies.
Do not be misled by the United Arab Emirates' appearance. The UAE has thick skin and bitter flesh. We are no easy prey.
After decades of bitter rivalry between Iran and its Gulf neighbours, recent years had seen a rapprochement between Tehran and Abu Dhabi. Trade was expanding. Around 500,000 Iranians call the UAE home. So why is Iran seemingly firing more projectiles at the UAE than at Israel, the country who, along with the United States, started this war?
Dubai is really the epicenter of globalization. It's a powerhouse. And any attacks on the United Arab Emirates, on Dubai, is really a power multiplier from the Iranian perspective. It rattles the world economy.
Around 100 kilometres of water separate the UAE from Iran. Missiles do not take long to reach Emirati shores.
Literally, it's next door. It's much easier to attack Dubai and the United Arab Emirates than to attack other countries, let's say Jordan or Israel, because Israel is well protected by an air defense system.
Iran cites the US strategic alliance as a reason to fire on Gulf nations. President Donald Trump was here last May, securing pledges for $3 trillion worth of deals from the UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia.
We have an Iran situation which we're going to take care of. One way or the other, we're taking care of. It'll be taken care of 100%.
This is not how the UAE or any Gulf nation wanted it to be taken care of. They had lobbied Trump to favour diplomacy over war, and a refusal to allow Trump to use its air bases or its airspace has not insulated the UAE from Iran's retaliation. Relations between the UAE and Iran had been strained since Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution. 3 islands claimed by Abu Dhabi are still controlled by Tehran. But the UAE did restore its ambassador to Tehran in 2022, signalling a cautious diplomatic reset after years of strain. A reset that has been shattered by Iran's decision to force its neighbours into this war. Paula Hancock's CNN, Dubai.
Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry says Iran is attacking them due to, quote, baseless claims. This includes what it calls false allegations that fighter jets and refueling aircraft had left the kingdom to participate directly in the war. So let's discuss more with Nick Robertson, who is joining us live in the Saudi capital of Riyadh. And Nick, thus far, if Iran's calculation had been that by attacking its Gulf neighbors, that would put more pressure on the United States to end this war from them specifically, well, 10 days in, thus far, that has been quite a miscalculation on the part of the Iranians. In fact, it's only generated a lot of anger and frustration from these nations at Iran. Just tell us about the latest threats back and forth between the Saudis and the Iranians.
Yeah, and I think it's the GCC hit writ slightly larger as well here, along with Jordan, that are trying to sort of prepare some language to put before the UN Security Council, which really reflects the language that we've heard from the Saudi Foreign Ministry today, which is Iran's actions, which have been targeting civilian infrastructure, which includes, they say, airports and oil infrastructure, contravenes international humanitarian law. And they say Iran is doing this knowingly on a false pretext, the one that you just outlined. And they've been saying, Saudi specifically has been saying for a week, Saudi Arabia is not a base for attack against Iran, that anything military aircraft, defensive systems that are operating out of Saudi bases are purely defensive, defending against Iran's missiles, against those civilian infrastructure across the whole GCC. And the message is, said very simply, the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs is saying Iran is not acting wisely, that this will lead to a greater widening and escalation of the conflict. And in that scenario, it's Iran that will come off worse. Now, all the Gulf states here don't want to get drawn into the war, but it's become absolutely clear to them that is Iran's intent to hit them where it hurts, even when there's no pretext, where it's against international law and there's no pretext for doing it. So it's a strong diplomatic message that's being sent here.
And Nick, just sort of quickly, in terms of over the weekend when Iran's president basically apologized initially for attacking Gulf states in the sort of 1 week that the war had happened. Obviously, the attacks continued after that. Explain what that tells you about the rift within Iran's leadership.
It certainly showed at that moment, it put President Pezeshkian in a position of almost sort of challenging the hard lines, the IRGC, the proxies, the regional proxies, challenging them to follow his word. And within a few hours, they didn't. And that does show that political rift against the IRGC. And the guest you had on speaking before in detail about the new Supreme Leader really laid out how much he leans in towards the IRGC. And for the IRGC, he's very much the front person that they want, even though he lacks theocratic legitimacy.
Max Foster in for Issa Suarez. Tonight, we begin with day 10 of the war with Iran. And as the conflict grows, so does the economic impact. Here are the latest developments. US President Donald Trump says he'll hold a news conference on the war in about 3.5 hours from now. We'll carry it live. Iranians took to the streets to celebrate the decision to name Ali Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, as the new Supreme Leader. The defiant move appears to be aimed at President Trump, who had described the choice as unacceptable. Lebanon's president is calling for an immediate ceasefire, along with direct talks with Israel. That's after the IDF struck Hezbollah strongholds in Beirut suburbs. And Israel says it has launched a new wide-scale wave of strikes on Iran. Attacks on energy infrastructure have oil prices surging past $100 per barrel at one point for the first time in years. G7 finance ministers have been meeting today but didn't make a decision on whether to release joint oil reserves. Earlier, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters that American forces are on track to topple the Iranian regime.
The goals of this mission are clear, and it's important to continue to remind the American people of why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying their missiles and their launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their navy. I think we are all seeing right now the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and to the world.
Kevin Liptak's at the White House for us. Jeremy Diamond is in Tel Aviv with more on the strikes by Israel. But Kevin, if I can just go first to you, this press conference, we've just heard about it. It seems like quite a statement's going to be made. Am I reading too much into it?
We'll see. I mean, the president has obviously been on the phone sort of constantly over the last week talking to reporters, but obviously seeing him answer some of these questions on camera will be a different moment. You know, he's down at Doral, which is his golf club outside of Miami. And he certainly has a lot that I think people want to ask him about, you know, the elevation of the new supreme leader in Iran. You know, he had warned ahead of time that replacing the elder Khamenei with the younger Khamenei would be unacceptable. He just got off the phone with NBC and said it was a big mistake and said that he doesn't know that it's going to last. So I think we have a sense of his viewpoint on that. I think what reporters are really going to want to press him on is what his end game in this conflict is, because so far when you listen to the White House press secretary or when you listen to the defense secretary, all of these individuals who have been out speaking on behalf of the administration, it has not been precisely clear what exactly President Trump is looking for to either declare success or to say that this mission is over. Everything we've heard from now is that we are closer to the beginning of this war than the end, even as all of these costs start to stack up, whether it's the cost in American lives. You know, we just learned yesterday that the 7th U.S. service member had died as part of this conflict, or whether the costs when it comes to gas prices, which are now at their highest point of either of President Trump's two terms. And so so I think he will have a lot to answer for today. The other question that I think people will have is the question of responsibility and culpability for that strike on the girls' school in Iran on the very first day of the war. President Trump came out over the weekend and said very definitively that this was the responsibility of Iran, that they were the one who carried out that strike, even though the Pentagon says it's investigating, and even though news outlets, including CNN, have done their own open source investigations that suggest it was the U.S. military that was operating in the region at the time. And so, you know, these on-camera press conferences do provide more of an opportunity for sustained questioning and really pressing the president on what exactly his evidence was on that and all of these other issues. You know, when you're on the phone with the president, I don't know that there is necessarily the instinct to press him on things because he can just hang up on you. And that's a very different circumstance when he's doing it on camera in front of reporters. And so this will be, I think, a very important moment at what seems to be a very critical moment in the war itself as it enters its second week, as all of these uncertainties seem to mount, and as Iran elects a new leader that the president has already said he doesn't think he can work with.
Kevin, thank you for that conference in a couple of hours. Jeremy, take us through what's happening on the ground then.
Well, over the course of the day, we've had multiple sirens of incoming missiles, both from Iran as well as from Hezbollah. Today, we saw that the Iranians used, once again, these cluster-type munitions fitted onto the tops of these ballistic missiles, scattering smaller bombs throughout the area. And in fact, today, we saw the first fatality as a result of one of these cluster munition attacks with a construction worker on the outskirts of Tel Aviv who was killed by one of these direct impacts of one of these smaller bombs. Two other people were seriously injured. We also saw a missile coming in from Hezbollah that hit near the town of Ramleh in central Israel. No serious injuries as a result of that strike, but we are continuing to see as both Iran and Hezbollah are trying to find new ways to get through Israel's air defenses, to have an impact here, not only in terms of fatalities and casualties, but really just disrupting daily life here in Israel. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is continuing to carry out an extraordinary series of strikes in both Iran as well as in Lebanon. And today we heard from the Lebanese president, Joseph Aoun, who talked about the fact that the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people are really being caught now between Hezbollah on the one side and Israel on the other. He talked about, he was highly critical of Hezbollah in his remarks, although he didn't name the group directly. He talked about those who launched missiles at Israel and sparked this retaliation from Israel as endangering the people of Lebanon and really putting the Iranian regime above the needs of the Iranian people. He also talked about the growing humanitarian crisis that we're witnessing in Lebanon, with more than 500,000 people now displaced.
Team is reporting that they heard the thuds from what appeared to be airstrikes shortly after dawn. Black smoke is still hanging over Tehran. The fires from oil storage tanks continue to burn after major airstrikes on them over the weekend. CNN's Fred Pleitgen is on the ground in Iran. A reminder that CNN operates in Iran with the permission of the Iranian government, but we maintain full editorial control over what we report.
It's an absolutely apocalyptic scene here. We've just made it to the Shahran oil depot, which was attacked last night in a massive wave of airstrikes. We heard those going on for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, with massive thuds and then explosions that we could hear. And that thick black plume of smoke, we saw that last night, and now we're actually seeing it up close. And what we're also seeing is that some of those destroyed storage tanks are still on fire. There's still flames originating from them. You can also see here that the area around here is also completely destroyed. There's people here actually working on this electricity pole to try and get the electricity back. And then this tanker vehicle here also that is right in front of the gate has been completely destroyed as well. The front gate of the facility also in complete ruins. The facility appears to be completely in ruins now after these massive airstrikes, and again, still on fire, still burning. And you can see that thick black smoke through the entire city across all of Tehran. It's been raining this morning in Tehran. There was oil mixed into the rain, so this is definitely a massive incident that is still going on.
And his team. Now let's go to Nick Payton-Walsh. He is live near the Israel-Lebanon border, looking over his shoulder because you have been hearing munitions and strikes all day. What are you hearing at this hour?
Yeah, it has been fairly constant, the often distant blasts we've been seeing. And oddly now, actually, just in this area where there's supposed to be no movement, I'm seeing a convoy. It looks about 10 vehicles moving along. Anyway, clearly, what we've been seeing here is intensified Israeli airstrikes. During the dark last night over the hills inside southern Lebanon, blasts, persistent airstrikes, quite relentless, to be honest. And we've since learned from the Israel Defense Forces that they launched their second targeted raid inside southern Lebanon, not specific to the place, commanders' facilities, the target. But this, I think, combined with what we've been seeing this morning, I saw in Apache, we've seen multiple jets in the sky. Another impact behind me over there, I suspect probably on the other side of the hills, is not any sign at this point that Israel has the forces amassed here, at least publicly, that we could see for any kind of significant ground invasion. Instead, they are continuing to pick off certain things. We've seen some tanks on our movements as well, but it appears a lot of the focus is currently on southern Beirut, where there have been significant blasts heard again today after the mandatory evacuation order of hundreds of thousands of people from that huge sprawling area of Beirut, and also too south of the Litani River over in southern Lebanon behind me. Again, another impact over there. This is quite relentless, the pace at which we're hearing these explosions. Just about an hour or so ago, we were on the receiving end of some incoming rocket fire that went over the nearby town here of Kiryat Shimona, intercepted, but the warning between the sirens going on and the rockets passing overhead, a matter of seconds, as we're that close to Hezbollah here. But I think it's fair to say that from sort of the fight back that we've been seeing Hezbollah putting up, Israel had its first 2 fatalities that it announced yesterday. We think not too far away from where I'm standing, and have had at least 14 injured so far amongst their armed forces. On the Lebanese side, 400 dead, say Lebanese officials. About 100 of those Lebanese officials say were children. Clearly, this separate chapter of the war with Iran against an Iranian ally picking up some degree of pace as Israel prosecutes its goals here, from what we can hear, quite speedily.
Yeah, it's important what you say, because it talks about what the population has to deal with. They only have seconds, not very long, to try and get to safety when you hear those sirens going off. Very, very terrifying scenario there. Let's go now to Paula Hancock, who is in Dubai. She has got the latest on a Bahrain refinery that was hit and what is happening in the other Gulf nations, including where she is there in the UAE. What are you learning?
Well, Sarah, we did see a fire today at a Bahrain national oil company infrastructure. This was in one of the industrial areas in Bahrain. We have started to see that energy infrastructure is being targeted more and more. It has been really since the beginning of this. We saw here in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, that Iran has these oil facilities, energy infrastructure on their target list. It appears as though something was hit in Bahrain. We also know that there was a drone attack that hit a residential area. Again, this was close to energy infrastructure. The National Communications Center saying there has been significant damage. 32 people were injured in that particular blast. We know 4 of them seriously, and a number of them were children, including a 2-month-old infant. Now, this was just about 3 miles south of the capital in an area called Sitra. But that really is key, the fact that it was close to energy infrastructure, something we appear to be seeing more of. Now, looking elsewhere in the Gulf as well, we know that in Kuwait they have intercepted incoming projectiles this Monday here in the UAE. There have been 2 waves of incoming in Abu Dhabi, just about an hour down the road from Dubai. We've heard interceptions overhead as well. Qatar, just in the last 10 minutes, we understand, has heard blasts, and they had a previous wave early this morning. So there's no let up at this point. Sarah?
Yeah, at one point, the president of Iran apologized and said they were going to stop hitting their neighbors, but the hardliners had another idea as to what they were planning on doing, and it continues. Thank you to you, Paula Hancock, and to our Nick Payton-Walsh, who was on the Israeli-Lebanon border. John?
Right overnight, President Trump said the war in Iran will not end until he and Israel decide it is over. This comes as several administration officials refuse to rule out U.S. troops on the ground. Let's get right to CNN's Kevin Liptak live at the White House. What's the latest from there this morning, Kevin?
Yeah, and the sense that you get from administration officials is that we may be closer to the beginning of this war than the end of it. And certainly the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei to Supreme Leader has not been met positively inside the administration. President Trump saying that he was, quote, not happy about it. He said that in a phone call with Fox News. And remember, he just said last week that if the son of the slain Supreme Leader was elevated to that job, he would consider it unacceptable. He's also said that he wants a say in who becomes Supreme Leader in Iran, and it seems pretty clear that the Iranian regime did not give him that say. As one regional diplomat put it to me, this was a direct rebuke of President Trump. It seems to suggest that there's no compromise, no off-ramp in the offing, at least in the immediate term, suggesting a prolonged conflict. And in fact, we did hear from Pete Hegseth, who was doing an interview with 60 Minutes last night, that this is only the beginning, suggesting that the U.S. is just now going to begin ramping up its attacks on Iran. He was also asked about the prospect of U.S. boots on the ground. Remember, President Trump has not ruled this out. Listen to what Pete Hegseth said.
People ask boots on the ground, no boots on the ground, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, go in, go in. President Trump knows, I know, you don't tell the enemy, you don't tell the press, you don't tell anybody what your limits would be on an operation. We reserve the right. We would be completely unwise if we did not reserve the right to take any particular option, whether it included boots on the ground or no boots on the ground.
Now, over the weekend, President Trump observed the dignified transfer of 6 Americans who have died in this conflict already. Pete Hegseth saying on 60 Minutes, quote, there will be more casualties. John.
And in fact, we now know that a 7th soldier has died. He was killed, or he died from wounds he suffered on March 1st. Kevin Liptak at the White House, thank you very much. Kate.
Let's talk about all this right now. Joining us right now is a former U.S. ambassador to the European Union in Trump's first term, Gordon Sondland. Thanks for being here, Ambassador. Let's talk about the new man selected to be Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. The president already said that he's unacceptable, an unacceptable choice. And then when he told ABC this over the weekend, Trump said, if he doesn't get approval from us, he's not going to last long. How do you read that? What do you think happens now with this new Supreme Leader?
Well, this new Supreme Leader, the son of Khamenei, is no Delcy Rodriguez. And if I were in his shoes, I don't think I would be buying green bananas. He's absolutely telegraphed that he's not only going to continue his father's philosophy, but he's going to double down and triple down. And that's something to be noted about the Iranian regime. And they keep doing it over and over, and it seems to scare members of Congress and others. When they have no cards to play, they always double down. When they have no cards to play, they always double down. And, you know, being the successor of the leader in a country that forswore having hereditary monarchies or theocracies is the height of hypocrisy. So I don't think that guy's going to last very long, Kate.
If this is Iran declaring it's digging in, what then is an off-ramp that you see to keep the United States out of an extended military conflict, as the president has promised it would not become?
Well, my own contacts and friendships that go back for years with U.S. Persian diaspora from both sides of the political spectrum tell me that there won't be any meaningful conversations with the government of Iran until they are so heavily degraded, which we're in the process of doing right now, that the conversation will change dramatically. It's one thing to sit down with these mullahs when they have no missiles left, they have no navy left, their fissile materials have been spirited away from Iran and put somewhere else in a safe place. It's a very different conversation. They can still, roar and thunder, but, the emperor has no clothes at that point. And that's exactly where President Trump is headed right now. The sole focus is degrading ability.
And then the conversation can happen, I guess, is your point. Let me ask you about...
Exactly.
Speaking of your contacts, the president has publicly criticized the British Prime Minister this weekend, saying that essentially, not even essentially, saying that Washington does not need the UK's help, does not need UK aircraft carriers in its operations against Iran. And he accused the British Prime Minister of seeking to, the way he put it, is join wars after we've already won. Should the president be telling allies, we don't need you or want your help in this?
Well, the thing you have to love about Donald Trump is he's pissed at Starmer, and he has the right to be. He asked our closest allies, he said, look, we're going to take the hit here. It's Israel and the United States. We need your support with bases. We need your support with Diego Garcia. Send us some, carriers and other things. And then Starmer goes off into this sort of Labor Party, well, I'm not sure it's legal, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, when he puts his finger into the wind and realizes that he better play ball, then all of a sudden he's a day late and $1 short. This just annoys the commander-in-chief when he's in the middle of a war. It's like, okay, you're not asking for my boots on the ground, you're not asking for my men and women to get killed. The least I can do is support you, and he hasn't been supportive.
But I was just looking at a piece you wrote a week ago. You called on Europe to do just this, to stand with the United States. Then the UK says now it's going to stand with the United States, and then the president says no thanks. Is that smart strategy?
Well, it's not, it's not a no thanks. Of course they're going to take it. They're dispatching a carrier. They're doing some intel. They're doing all kinds of things. What he's doing is he's smacking Starmer around publicly and saying, you don't get, 3 bites at the apple. When we say it's go time, it's go time. You're read in on everything. You know what's going on minute by minute. Don't hang back and then come in when it's convenient. That is not helpful. That is what Trump is basically saying.
To the Gulf. Nick Robertson is standing by for you in the Saudi capital of Riyadh. And Nick, we are hearing a pretty robust and stark statement from Saudi Arabia, in part saying the following: Iran's current actions towards our countries do not reflect wisdom or serve the interest of avoiding a widening escalation in which Iran would be the greatest loser. Pretty strong language, Nick. What should we make of this statement today?
Yeah, I think it is incredibly strong language. What it doesn't do in this sort of cease and desist, they also say that continued attacks represent this escalation. Saudi Arabia has tried to stay out of this war, wants to stay out of the war. It's real perception here that this is the United States and Israel's war, and that being drawn into it will create greater chaos, greater confusion, greater damage to the investments in this region and the future that the Crown Prince wants for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, wants for the region. But the language has been very, very clear in this very strong diplomatic message. It says that Iran's strikes against civilian infrastructure, and here they mean airports, they mean oil fields, represents a breach of international humanitarian law. So they're creating a legal context to put forward what Iran is doing. So it seems to be a very clear diplomatic ratcheting up of the rhetoric. And I think if you add into that picture as well the reflections of the way that the United States is interpreting that, they've issued an order for all non-emergency staff and families of embassy and consulate staff, both here, both in Jeddah, both in Dammam in the east, to get out of Saudi Arabia, ordered to leave because of security risks. The sort of flags, if you will, or the arrows here, diplomatically are pointing in a direction that the situation can really potentially get worse. I think it's key to mention here as well that Saudi Arabia is not saying it's going to join the war. In fact, it's reinforced the message to Iran that its bases are being used. They're being used to defend the skies from Iranian missiles, defend Saudi Arabia, the GCC countries from those attacking Iranian missiles. And they say Iran is fully cognizant of that, yet it continues. Today, ballistic missiles fired at a Saudi airbase, multiple intercepted, and again, more drones, 2 waves of drones in the early hours this morning fired at a key Saudi oil field, and that's an oil field they keep going for.
Nick, the European Union's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, describing Iran as weaker than ever before. I just want our viewers to have a listen to this.
Iran is responsible for decades of violence, and the fewer options Iran has to terrorize the region, the better. Iran's military capabilities are limited, and the regime is weaker than it ever has been before. But there is no clear trajectory how this war will end.
I'm really interested that you brought up this sort of diplomatic chatter out there. The Europeans, the Gulf states, including plus Jordan at this point, certainly pushing a UN Security Council using international law on the global stage to isolate Iran at this point. There is certainly significant momentum for that. Just explain, and what the objectives might be at this stage, should they get a resolution at the Security Council at this point. Why is that so, or would that be so significant?
It's hugely significant because I think everyone, particularly in Europe, particularly in this region, recognizes that if there is a wider war, I think there's a sense that everyone here is sort of standing on the edge of the precipice and staring in, and they can see the situation, that if oil and liquid natural gas are not able to be exported from here, and agricultural products, fertilizers, all the key things that underpin the economies outside, in this region and outside of this region, if there isn't a break in the fighting and there isn't a way to get those energy products out, then the knock-on global economic impact is huge. The language that's being used, that Iran, by attacking civilian infrastructure, we know just last night, 32 Bahraini civilians injured during an attack in Bahrain last night, many of them children, many of them seriously injured. Saudi Arabia yesterday, an Indian national, Bangladeshi national, 12 Bangladeshis, the 12 were injured, the 2 were killed in an Iranian missile impact here. All of that underscores the sort of civilian nature of what's being targeted, and that's being held up as a breach of international humanitarian law by Iran. And that perhaps can lead to a mechanism and a language that can be successful at the UN Security Council. Of course, we know that Russia has stood very strongly behind Iran so far in this conflict, and they would have a power of veto within the Security Council. But even a big vote writ larger at the UN will send a very, very strong message. It's not clear that it's a message that Iran is going to listen to, but it's one that can become a vehicle to further isolate Iran and try to send that diplomatic message. Becky.
Yeah, no, well explained, and such an important track as we continue to report on the war, of course, the military sort of angle of the war and how that war is impacting the region where you and I are. We see no sort of political track, you know, to speak of at this present. That third track, as it were, that diplomatic track, is hugely important and one we should absolutely keep across. Good to have you, Nick. Thank you very much indeed. We are following these behind-the-scenes diplomatic efforts as closely as possible, just as we cover that latest battlefield in Iran, Israel, and the UAE and across the region. My team here in Abu Dhabi are contributing across multiple hours of CNN programming and reporting new information on all CNN platforms around the clock. So if you miss those news-making conversations when they happen live on CNN. Do follow my social channels where we post all the key lines and most insightful analysis from interviewees throughout the day. That's at Becky CNN on X and Instagram, as well as our show's landing page, cnn.com/CTW. US President Trump says he will decide with the Israeli Prime Minister when to end the war with Iran. In a telephone interview with the Times of Israel, he said, and I quote him here, "I think it's mutual. We've been talking. I'll make a decision at the right time, but everything is going to be taken into account," end quote. Asked if Israel could continue the war after the US decides to halt its strikes, President Trump said, quote, "I don't think it's going to be necessary." Let's bring in Kevin Liptak at the White House. Kevin, what's been reaction to Trump's comments there at the White House in Washington on Capitol Hill? What do you think US lawmakers who've been largely left out of this process will make of them?
Yeah, completely sidelined in some ways of their own making. But I think that there are still a lot of questions, both among Republicans and Democrats, about how long this war is going to last, what precisely the military objectives are, and how President Trump plans to end all of this. What exactly is his end game? Because for all of the explanations that you've heard from the White House podium, from the Pentagon podium, about trying to degrade Iran's missile capabilities, its nuclear ambitions, the president seems to have a much broader scope of what he's looking for here, including complete surrender of Iran, the definition of which he hasn't explicitly made clear. And so I think when you talk to lawmakers who are wondering where all of this is going, they do sort of express some misgivings about what exactly it is the president is trying to accomplish. And, you know, when they were briefed last week by senior members of the administration, many professed not to have heard a precise end game from the president. And so when he says that he alone, along with the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, will decide when the war ends, I don't know that that gives a lot of them a great amount of solace, just because it doesn't come with any sort of quantifiable objectives that the president is looking for here. And, you know, you're right that Congress has been put to the side in all of this. There were 2 votes last week attempting to assert their war powers authority that failed on Capitol Hill. A lot of lawmakers, particularly on the Republican side, willing, at least for now, to give President Trump very wide leeway in how he executes this conflict. But as this war goes on, and as the political fallout becomes clearer and clearer, whether it's the number of Americans who are killed or whether it's the price of gas in the United States, I think it's clear that the president will be coming under some sort of pressure, at least from members of his own party, to at least more clearly explain what he's trying to get out of all of this.
Iran has a new supreme leader. What does that mean for your military effort and the confrontation with the United States and Israel?
That means the system is quite functioning.
So the United States says it's drastically degraded the Iranian military, the capabilities as far as missiles is concerned, drones is concerned. How much longer can you do this?
That is one of the false narratives that the United States government is producing. Iranian military is quite strong, as you see, because they have the motivation, they have the arms that they need, which are produced in Iran. As a matter of fact, we are not dependent on any other country for weapons and arms.
So your side is ready for a long war if the United States and Israel choose that. Do you consider this an existential threat to the Islamic Republic?
It is an existential threat to the Islamic Republic, and therefore we have to stay with full might, as we are doing now.
Is your side seeking, or will you seek, a ceasefire with the United States at this point in time, and with Israel?
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore, because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping with his promises. And we experienced it in 2 times of negotiations, that while we were engaged in negotiation, they struck us.
How does all of this end then? If you say right now there's no room for negotiation, President Trump says he wants complete surrender, what does that lead to?
There's no room unless the economic pressure would be built up to the extent that other countries would intervene to guarantee this termination of aggression of Americans and Israelis against Iran.
Finally, what is your message to President Trump as we go on?
That means that what is the end of this game? And we are ready to continue that game.
The end of this game, you mean how this war will end?
Yeah, the end of the game would be the time that Americans and Israelis would come to this understanding that this strategy is not working.
Welcome to the second hour of Connect the World. I'm Becky Anderson. Signs today pointing to no quick end to the war in the Middle East. Here's what we know right now. A senior Iranian official warns the conflict has entered a new phase. And Iran's foreign ministry saying today, with Iran under attack, there is no room for negotiations. Crowds have been forming across Iran after the regime called for nationwide gatherings to pledge allegiance to the newly named Supreme Leader there. Well, the war wreaking havoc on energy production and shipping. Price of oil crossing $100 a barrel for the first time since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Well, the global economic shockwaves have forced the G7 to call an emergency meeting. Finance ministers from the world's largest economies scrambling to address this crisis. And Turkey says another ballistic missile from Iran has been shot down as it entered its airspace, neutralized by NATO air defense. And as Israel announces a new wide-scale wave of attacks on regime targets in Iran. We're also seeing fresh Israeli airstrikes on the suburbs of Beirut. CNN's team there a short time ago witnessing a large explosion, the latest of multiple strikes to hit Lebanon's capital today. Right, I want to start this hour with CNN's Fred Pleitkin, who is in Tehran and reporting there. He has an exclusive interview with the foreign policy advisor to the Supreme Leader. CNN is operating in Iran with the permission of the Iranian government. We do, though, maintain full editorial control over what CNN reports. This is part of Fred's.
Iran has a new supreme leader. What does that mean for your military effort and the confrontation with the United States and Israel?
That means the system is quite functioning.
So the United States says it's drastically degraded the Iranian military, the capabilities as far as missiles is concerned, drones is concerned. How much longer can you do this?
That is one of the false narratives that the United States government is producing. Iranian military is quite strong, as you see, because they have the motivation, they have the arms that they need, which are produced in Iran. As a matter of fact, we are not dependent on any other country for weapons and arms.
So your side is ready for a long war if the United States and Israel choose that. Do you consider this an existential threat to the Islamic Republic?
It is an existential threat to the Islamic Republic, and therefore we have to stay with full might, as we are doing now.
Is your side seeking, or will you seek, a ceasefire with the United States at this point in time, and with Israel?
I don't see any room for diplomacy anymore, because Donald Trump has been deceiving others and not keeping with his promises. And we experienced it in 2 times of negotiations, that while we were engaged in negotiation, they struck us.
How does all of this end then? If you say right now there's no room for negotiation, President Trump says he wants complete surrender, what does that lead to?
There's no room unless the economic pressure would be built up to the extent that other countries would intervene to guarantee